Welcome back everybody to our studies in propositional logic. In this video what we're going to be doing is talking about how we define propositional logic. The purpose of this is to essentially delimit the contours of our discussion, to work out what is and what isn't the subject of propositional logic. This is done by defining what is known as the logical language. So we take here and we define what is known as the logical logical language. Okay. The logical language is a way of defining what is and what isn't within the remit and the bounds of propositional logic. Now, we've talked about already the definition of each of the various different connectives in propositional logic: the conjunction, the disjunction, negations, etc., etc. But what actually formulates the language of propositional logic? This is simply a discussion in what forms the set of all things that are considered to be the language of propositional logic. And we can define this as the language of propositional logic as follows. We would use the following symbol. We would use a sort of Laplace-esque L with the little symbol PL here. And when we get on to doing first order logic, in future lessons, first order logic, we'll define the first order logical language as a similar Laplace with the little FOL down there, like so. So this is how we define what is and what isn't in the remit of propositional logic. Now, essentially, what propositional logic is as the logical language is just a set of sentences which are then constructed in a specific way. We noted this previously. We noted that what propositional logic is fundamentally just the logic of propositions. Okay. And so the result of this is that when we think about propositions, we think about things like P, and we think about Q, we think about R. These are the propositions, and then what we do is we do some logic with that. So we add in some with some connectives like so, and then we have this here like that, and maybe we have this in brackets, etc. Or maybe we have this in brackets as well, and then we have another connective here in the middle. This is what constructing propositional logic essentially involves us and entails that we do. And so we can understand, firstly, that we have essentially a set of propositions or a set of primitive sentences. A set of primitive sentences. And then it is from here that we then construct the language of propositional logic more formally. And so fundamentally, if we were to call the set of primitive sentences, if we were to just use the Greek letter theta as being the set of primitive sentences, primitive sentences, okay. You can use any other symbol if you wanted. You could just write the letters primitive or whatever. You can essentially have this being just a symbol that we use to define the set of primitive sentences. Well, if that is the case, then we can define the language of propositional logic as follows. We would say that if, let's say we'll have the first rule as being as follows. We would say that, okay, fundamentally, if some sentence A is a member of this class. And what we use to suggest this, and what we use in set theory as saying that this is a member of this, is we use this little weird E symbol here, like so. So if we were to say that this random sentence A is a member of the class of primitive sentences, then at the same time, A will be a member of the language of propositional logic. This is the first rule that we use to define what is and what isn't in the language of propositional logic. What this does is just define that a sentence can be a part of propositional logic if it is as a member of the primitive sentence set, the set of sentences that are primitive. That is the first rule. We then go on to add the connectives. Okay, so this is just simply telling us that any proposition that is a primitive is a member of the language of propositional logic. We then can go on to say that, therefore, as a result of this fact, if this sentence, okay, is a member of the class of all things that are primitive sentences, then at the same time, then oopsie daisy, then at the same time, not only is a member of the language of propositional logic, but so too is the negation of a member of the language of propositional logic. Well, what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that we can do things in propositional logic with the negation sign, with the negation connective, okay, and that can still form part of propositional logic, okay. We know already that propositional logic is fundamentally the logic of propositions and their relationship with each other in terms of the connectives that we can add in. So if A is a part of the class of things that are part of the language of propositional logic, then it necessarily has to be the case that the negation of A can be as well. And you can sort of probably see where we're going to go from here and what we're going to really ultimately construct. Because then we can also say that if A and B, okay, are both sentences that are part of the language of the part of the primitive sentence class, then we can say the following. Then we can say that, okay, A and B, the conjunction of the two, are part of the class of things that are propositional logic. That's the first thing that we can say. The second thing we can say is that the disjunction, A or B, are going to be part of the class of things that are propositional logic. Okay. And you can also make the claim that all of the other connectives that we can have as well. So if A then B. So if A then B is a class of the language of propositional logic, and so too is A if and only if B. These are also languages of propositional logic. Okay. Now, the reason why textbooks do not necessarily have this bit here, these two at the bottom, as part of this language, is because you can define these two in relation to the other three. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these here and I'm just going to remove them from our collection. The reason why I've said I added them in initially is because I feel like people would get confused if they didn't see me add them in. Fundamentally, you actually don't need to have them added in. The point of this exercise is to add in all and only the things that we need to in our language of propositional logic. We actually don't need to add the if A then B or A if and only if B into this language of propositional logic as their own separate things. Is the reason why is because we can translate these into representations of these, and we will get to that when we look at logical equivalences. So these can be represented, these can be written in a way that only uses the negation, the conjunction, and the disjunction. I'll explain why in future lessons' time when we look at various different logical equivalences. So fundamentally, all that we need are these three rules, and we have constructed propositional logic from these three rules. The first rule is that if A is a proposition, is a primitive sentence, as in it is a part of the class of things that are propositions, then A is a member of the language of propositional logic. We've got that first thing ticked. The next one, if A is a member of this particular class of propositions, then at the same time, the negation of A also has to be part of the language. We have that. And then finally, if we have A and B as part of this propositional logic, okay, as part of the logical propositions, then it is the case that the conjunction of the two are, as well as the disjunction of the two are. With all this being said, we only need one more rule. We only need one more rule to add. And this rule simply closes the list, okay? And we will just say that nothing else is a part of the language of propositional logic. And we are done.